When Donovan Smith went down with an injury in week 13, the Chiefs were forced to put in their third-round rookie Wanya Morris, and for the most part, he's held up really well. It's still kind of rough around the edges. He's not all the way there from a technique standpoint, but you see the upside that made him a day 2 pick, and I think there's a chance he's one of the Chiefs' tackles of the future. Through his 3 games as a starter, he has a 62.0 PFF grade, which is really good for a rookie. It's a really small sample size, but for example, this year, DeJuan Jones is PFF's highest graded rookie offensive tackle at 64.7, so you hardly ever see rookie offensive linemen come in and play like quality starters. He's a really good athlete. At 6'5", he has 35-inch arms, which is 80th percentile for offensive tackles. Pretty good numbers in the 40-yard dash and the broad jump as well. And the length and movement skills give him a really nice floor and pass protection. He doesn't really have to overextend and get off balance to land his punch, and he has excellent pocket range and recovery ability. In pass pro, he pretty much exclusively punches with the outside hand, which is kind of a dangerous game. Normally, it's bad practice to outside hand strike because that's what a speed rusher is trying to beat. And if you just throw out that outside hand, he swipes it down, you're giving him a really easy path around the corner. But Wanya Morris, for the most part, makes it work for several reasons. Number one, like I said, he has really long arms, so he's establishing that contact relatively early in the rep. You see right here, he's blocking rookie Lucas Van Ness. He's early punching with the outside hand. He lands his punch before Van Ness is able to establish contact, so even though he swipes down that outside arm, it still kind of stalls his momentum a little bit, and when he tries to accelerate around the corner, he's lost most of his initial speed. The other thing that makes this work is that he has really good pocket range to land that initial strike and then continue to get depth. A lot of times pass rushers that are consistently getting beat with their outside hand will throw out that punch and then they'll completely stop their feet and just expect to be able to win the rep from that first punch. Morris knows that that first strike isn't going to win the rep, and he's got to continue to get depth, and he's also got to pull back that outside hand and reset his punch so that he can block the pass rusher in both directions. So going back to this first rep, again, outside hand strike. Now you might notice that his hand's kind of on the face mask there. Don't worry, I've got plenty of other clips to talk about that issue, but ignoring that for the moment, you get a good initial punch. He doesn't stall his feet, he gains more depth, pulls back his outside hand, resets with a 2-hand strike, and keeps Van Ness out of the pocket. Another example from the Bills game, you can see Leonard Floyd is threatening this inside rush through the B gap, so Wanya Morris actually stops his feet after that first kick step, but then once Floyd hits him with the in and out, he's got the fluidity to regain his backwards acceleration and get back into his set. He punches with the outside hand, which again is risky, but he makes it work because he's got long enough arms that as long as he times it right, he's going to be the first one establishing contact. Leonard Floyd gets into the double swipe, but he's not letting him beat the outside hand. He immediately pulls it back, works to get more depth, and then at the top of the rush, he resets his hands and flushes them upfield. A few of his losses in pass pro have come when he's striking with the outside hand, but he isn't proactive in releasing contact and then resetting his punch. He just outside hand punches, tries to maintain contact, and that gives pass rushers a lot of opportunities to work different moves. So right here against Dietrich Wise, he punches with the outside hand. If he pulled back right now and reset his base, he could win this rep a lot more cleanly, but he keeps that extension. He isn't very firm with his grip strength right now, so Dietrich Wise is able to forklift him, which is where you're lifting up the blocker's arms, driving them backwards. He does a good job recovering and driving him upfield, but Wise is able to get a hand on Mahomes here. And then next play, again, outside hand strike, but when you're punching early, when the pass rusher is kind of far away from you, it's a lot harder to latch on and secure contact. And since he just leaves that arm extended, Wise can forklift, beat him to the inside. Mahomes has to scramble outside of the pocket. Another way this outside hand strike can give him problems is that it makes it a lot harder to anchor against speed to power. So right here, Greg Rousseau gives an in and out into a speed rush. Morris punches with the outside hand. Again, you can see the length is an advantage because it allows him to make contact outside of his body cylinder, but by leaving that outside hand on the pass rusher, his chest is wide open. Greg Rousseau sees this, transitions into a power rush, and Morris isn't able to reset his hands quickly enough to anchor. And then the other thing I gotta mention with hand placement is he's almost always 2 or 3 inches high with his punch. It resulted in an illegal contact penalty once against New England, but there were probably 7 or 8 examples across all of his tape from these 3 games where it could have easily been called. And that's an issue not only because it's going to draw penalties, but punching high makes you a lot more susceptible to forklifts and swipe moves. It's a lot more difficult to beat the hands later in the rush when the punch is low. And if you're punching at the helmet or the neck, that's just not a great leverage point to establish contact. contact as opposed to the chest plate where you can actually grab. I noticed this is an issue in his Oklahoma tape, but it is something that he needs to fix for multiple reasons. There were also a handful of times that he stopped his feet or opened up his hips too early and gave pass rushers a short corner. This play against Buffalo from the final drive, you'd probably like him to take another kick step and widen out a little bit more, but he opens up and lets Von Miller bend around the corner. And then this play is pretty debatable. I would probably put this sack on Mahomes for drifting too far back in the pocket, but I still think Morris could do a better job here. Instead of turning and running so early, take another kick step. That way you can stay in front of the block with your body instead of having to lean into it. I think overall he has the size and strength for a pretty reliable anchor. He can absorb that initial contact, drop his anchor quickly, and a lot of times even redirect that power and move the pass rusher backwards. I think becoming a little more patient with his hands will make him more effective against power, because like I've shown, there have been times where he'll let pass rushers get into his frame, but he did have probably his worst rep of the season against Josh Uche. Just an incredible play from him. He uses a hesitation bull rush where he's selling like he's not even rushing the passer, and then in one split second he transitions into the power rush, knocks Wanya Morris on his back. You can tell he just wasn't ready to anchor here. Uche got into his frame so quickly. But overall, for a rookie, I think he's been above average in pass pro. He's not a finished product with his technique, but he's got the traits, and there's just so many highlight blocks on his tape. If you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe and leave a like, and also follow us on all of our social medias. The links to those are in the description. And then it's a similar story as a run blocker. There's so many highlight plays on his tape, but there are enough losses to kind of even it out. At the second level, blocking linebackers, he has an incredible ability to locate moving targets, latch his hands, drive them into the ground. He got Josh Uche back on this play. They're running a screen to the left. He undercuts him, gets behind his field of vision, and then loops back around and flattens him. And then a few nice downfield blocks against Buffalo. Just really impressive body control out in open space. I think pin pull and toss plays to his side are going to be really effective. On down blocks and base blocks, when he's proactive with his hands establishing contact, he has really good power to drive people backwards. You can see on this play, quick upward strike, gets his hands inside, drives them probably 4 or 5 yards back. But there are also times that he'll be too patient and kind of cautious with his punch, almost approach it like a pass blocking rep. And you see right here on the goal line, Rashawn Gary's able to deconstruct his hands easily and get around him. And then I think reach blocks are probably the area that he's struggled with most overall. He doesn't have great footwork or bend to work over to the play side shoulder. His hand placement on these blocks is either inaccurate or non-existent. There are times he won't even try to get his hands on the person he's blocking, and he just doesn't really look to me like a natural zone blocker. There have been a few reach blocks that I think you'd technically call wins. This one against New England is probably his cleanest zone blocking rep. Good job getting his helmet across the midline. His hands are inside. He gets some good help from Joe Tooney and drives him eventually 7 yards into the ground. There were a few against Buffalo though where he technically got the player on the ground, but just really sloppy reps where he's basically in a side turn to the player he's blocking. Right here he's got his hand on the defender's horse collar. So this is definitely the area that I view as his biggest weakness at this point. So it's a small sample size, but I think for a third round pick that's kind of raw and developmental, this is about as good as I would have expected it to look. You've also got to keep in mind he played left tackle a couple years at Tennessee his first 2 years of college, but then his last 2 when he transferred to Oklahoma, he was a right tackle. So it's nice that he theoretically has that versatility to play both sides. We'll see if that actually translates to the NFL, but he hasn't really played competitive reps at left tackle in almost 3 years. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Also let me know in the comments any NFL players or teams that you'd like me to cover.